Hey guys, I want to talk about some Bitcoin news. We're going to talk about potential for alt season. Here behind me is Bitcoin dominance. You can see it's been in a clear trend, and it is near breaking this trend. It's just trying to reclaim this kind of a support area on this long-term trend we've been in since September of 2022. So for multiple years now, Bitcoin dominance has just been steadily rising throughout the cycle. I want to talk about some other signs of an alt season, and one way to look at this is the spot Bitcoin ETFs and the spot Ethereum ETFs. And just yesterday, we saw Bitcoin ETFs post a $523 million outflow, whereas ETH ETFs saw a $422 million outflow. Bitcoin outflows were higher than ETH, which is seen as a more risky asset, which is seen as the altcoin. Usually when Bitcoin falls, alts fall more, but this isn't the case here. And also last week, ETH ETFs blew Bitcoin ETFs out of the water in terms of inflows. Inflows for spot Bitcoin ETFs were 548 million, where net inflows for Ethereum spot ETFs were 2.8 billion. The market is speculating an alt season. They are preparing for it, getting ready. Analysts believe that Bitcoin is being manipulated currently, and Dan Crypto Trades pointed this out as well. Bitcoin took out a bunch of liquidity on both sides for the past 6 weeks, as it ranged around the same price region. And the biggest cluster in close proximity now sits at around 120,000, and our local range low of 112,000 is still in play. Watch for these areas as they act as local reversal zones. And we did see a reversal right at 112,300 or so. We've also been seeing bids for Bitcoin lower and lower on the order book. Keith Allen cites this as plunge protection at 105,000. And it could be a form of price manipulation. Bids moving lower invites price to move lower. And people are starting to believe the cycle isn't going to play out. Things are looking so bad, there's no chance we can end this year strong, like we have in pretty much every other cycle before it. And Rex Capital points this out. One of the most positive things about this current pullback is that this same retrace took place at the same moment in the cycle in both 2017 and 2021. And those retraces preceded upside to new all-time highs. And looking at Bitcoin, before I go back to past cycles and show you exactly how it's played out in the past, you can see that we did pull down very, very close to 112,000. We hit 112,350 before we got a nice little bounce. We did hold up these lows. Now it's a matter of reclaiming our 50 MA that we did break. We saw a clear reaction on a break of the 50 MA and a break of this trend. I'll get rid of this so you can see it. There's the 50 MA. I am very hopeful that this 112,000 ends up holding as support. It was a previous resistance. Like I mentioned yesterday, we saw a big reaction on the break of 112,000, see? And we held up 112,000 here along with the 50 MA. This will be an important area to hold. Otherwise, we're likely coming down to 108,000 or so right here. We saw some resistance there, and then it reclaimed it as support. And if 108,000 doesn't hold, we may try to test our 200 MA, which is now at 100,000. The highest the 200 MA has ever been in Bitcoin's history. The 200 MA is at $100,000. Almost on the dot there at 100,000. It's at about 100,500. Now let me show you what has happened last cycle. Look at September. We started pulling back. At the middle of September, we saw a pullback from 52,000 down to $40,000. We saw a roughly 25% pullback. And then what did Bitcoin do to end that year, to end the cycle? Well, from the end of September to the end of November, which is basically where Bitcoin topped out at that cycle, it absolutely rallied from the end of September here. It rallied 71% from September to November to end that cycle. And while I don't think Bitcoin will do a roughly 70-something% to end the year, let's just look for the fun of it. A move like that would bring it to $191,000, which sort of lines up with analyst expectations, at least some of them that are calling for 200,000, which we'll talk about in a second here. Now this here was the 2017 peak, and Bitcoin did top out in December. You see a pattern. Every cycle we have topped out at the very end of the year. And what happened throughout September? 2 cycles ago, basically we hit a high. We hit an all-time high in August, and then we retraced. It doesn't look like much, but this drop was actually 40%. A 40% drop, and by the time we got to the middle of September, Bitcoin bottomed out, and it ended this cycle extremely strong. September, October, November, and December all pretty much went up, and Bitcoin rallied 531% after its pullback in September during that cycle. We looked at this cycle, they both topped out at the end of the year essentially, and would you look at that, in 2013 Bitcoin hit a new all-time high, topped out, and then started pulling back right after. It topped out in pretty much November, December. Late November, early December, we saw our top. a massive rally, and we did see a bit of a correction from August to September before we started rallying again. In the stock market, September can tend to be a pretty rough month, and it's the same with crypto. A lot can change in the matter of a few months. The cycle is not over yet, and Anthony Scaramucci still believes 200,000 will hit. More specifically, he believes Bitcoin's on track to reach between 180 and 200,000. And he believes what's happening right now is a lot of consolidation and institutional adoption. And this bold prediction suggests that the current pullback is a healthy correction before another explosive move. And that is what we have seen in every cycle before it. But what do you guys think? Do you think this cycle will play out differently than all the cycles before it? Do you think we won't rally to new all-time highs? Do you think 150K is not in the cards? Always interested in your opinions. Also, how are you feeling about alt season? Are we getting into alt season? Is it not really coming up this year? Is only the top alts going to do good, such as ETH, Solana, Cardano? Cardano has been seeing a nice recovery, nearly $1 again. I do think we have the potential for things to be very exciting as we end this year. We have Fed cuts coming, and based on Bitcoin's 4-year cycle, based on Bitcoin's cycle every time we have seen it, Bitcoin ends that peak year, which is 2025. It ends that peak year on a very high note, on a strong note, at new all-time highs. Before it's time to have a major correction, before crypto winter comes, before all the leveraged bulls get wrecked. And there's another thing to think about with all these treasury companies. When Bitcoin goes in the wrong direction consistently, these treasury companies are going to struggle. And this could be the beginning of what creates the next crypto winter. Whereas in 2022, it was all about these exchanges that were over leveraged, that were scamming people in many cases, like with FTX. And I do think this cycle, the bear market will be marked by these companies that are way too leveraged into Bitcoin and aren't prepared if Bitcoin does have a massive drop. But let me know what you think. I appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next one.